The ruins were silent except for the soft cry of a baby. The broken city smelled of smoke and dust, and the wind carried the whispers of battles long finished. Among the shattered walls, an alien mother sat curled into the shadows, holding her child close to her chest. Her body was weak, her stomach empty for many days, but she ignored her own hunger. Every part of her soul was focused only on the small life trembling in her arms. Her child's eyes were half closed, tiny breath struggling against the cold air. She kissed the baby's forehead and whispered in her own tongue words of comfort that she no longer believed. Tears burned her eyes, but she held them back. If she cried, the baby would sense her fear. She wanted her baby to feel warmth, to feel hope even here in this world of ruins. The night around them was dangerous. Scavengers sometimes walked these broken streets searching for food, weapons, or victims. The war had ended for some, but for survivors like her, it never truly ended. She had seen friends die, family vanish, and dreams turn into ashes. Now, all she had left was her baby, the last piece of her heart. Her body shook as hunger tore at her. For 3 days she had eaten nothing, giving everything she found to her child. Her arms grew weaker each hour, but she refused to let go. She whispered to the sky, "Please, not for me, but save my baby. Let someone hear us. Let someone care." The baby whimpered, a sound like a broken star. She pressed him closer, rocking gently, even though she had no strength. Her own ribs showed under her skin, her face pale with exhaustion. She remembered better days, when her people laughed, when the markets were alive with music, when her baby was born under light instead of fire. But the war had stolen all of it, leaving only this silence. Then it happened. Footsteps echoed through the ruins, heavy, steady, and sharp. She froze, her whole body turning into stone. Her heart beat so loudly she feared the sound would give them away. The baby made a soft cry and she covered his mouth gently with her hand, trembling. The steps grew closer, crunching over broken glass and stone. The sound was different from her people, different from the metallic march of machines. These were boots, heavy human boots. Fear rushed into her. The humans had been enemies in this war, fighters who destroyed her cities and burned her skies. If this was a soldier, would he show mercy, or would he finish what the war had started? She pulled herself tighter into the corner, trying to hide behind the rubble. Her arms wrapped around her child like a shield. Her breath came in small gasps, praying to stay unseen. But the footsteps stopped right before her hiding place. A tall shadow fell over her, blocking the dim moonlight. She looked up slowly, her eyes meeting the gaze of a human soldier. He was tired, his face dirty with smoke and blood, his armor scratched and broken. He held a rifle, but it hung loosely at his side. For a moment, neither moved, both locked in silence. Her eyes were wide, with fear in his eyes, though hard, showed surprise. The baby let out a faint cry, breaking the moment like glass. The soldier lowered his weapon. Instead of aiming, he crouched down slowly, one hand raised as if to say, "I mean no harm." His voice was quiet, rough from battle, but calm. "I can help," he said, though she could not understand the words. Still, the tone was enough, soft and steady. She shook her head, tears slipping free. Her instincts told her not to trust. But the child whimpered again and her heart broke with the sound. The soldier reached into his bag and pulled out a small flask of water. He pushed it gently across the ground toward her. The liquid inside shimmered under the faint moon. Her lips were dry, her throat burned, but she pushed the flask away instead. She pointed at the baby, desperate and pleading. The soldier blinked, surprised, then slowly moved the flask closer to the child. Her hand shook as she took it, giving the smallest drops to her baby. The baby drank weakly, and for the first time in days a soft laugh came from his lips. The sound filled the air like a light in the dark. The mother stared at the human, still unsure, still afraid, but deep inside a small spark of hope lit within her heart. Maybe this was not an enemy. Maybe this was the answer to her silent prayer, in the ruins of a dead city, on a night filled with fear. An alien mother, a human soldier, and a starving child found each other. The war had torn their worlds apart. But in that moment, compassion built a fragile bridge between them, and the story of survival, trust, and hope had only just begun. The soldier stayed crouched in the rubble, his breath heavy, his rifle lowered. For a long moment he only watched the alien mother, her thin arms wrapped around the baby like unbreakable chains. He could see the way her body trembled, not just from hunger, but from fear. The war had taught him how enemies looked at him, with hate, with terror, with the same eyes she now had. But this woman did not fight, she did not raise a weapon. She only clung to the fragile life in her arms. His own body ached, his uniform was torn, his ribs sore from battles he barely survived. He was alone, separated from his unit after the last clash. For hours he had wandered the ruins, searching for shelter, searching for meaning in a war that already took too much. Now here he was, staring into the frightened eyes of someone who should have been his enemy. Yet something in her expression cut through the walls he carried inside. The mother kept her gaze locked on him, her lips trembling as she whispered to the child in her own tongue. He could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was the voice of a mother protecting her child, and he had heard the same tone back home. When his sister protected her newborn during the first raids, he swallowed hard, the memory stabbing into his chest. This alien mother, this stranger, looked more like his sister now than any enemy soldier. Slowly, carefully, he set his rifle down on the ground, pushing it away so it would not frighten her. He raised both hands to show he had no intention to harm. The alien mother's eyes flickered with doubt, but her arms relaxed only a little. The baby, still weak, reached a tiny hand toward the soldier, a soft cry echoing through the empty night. The soldier felt his throat tighten, and without thinking, he reached into his pouch. From the pouch he pulled his last food ration, a dry piece of bread, and a half-crushed energy bar. For days he had saved them, his only chance to keep moving. But as he looked at the baby's fragile face, the choice became clear. He broke the ration in half, placed one piece on the ground between them, and gently pushed it closer. His eyes told her, "It is for the child," even though his lips did not speak her language. The mother hesitated, her pride and fear holding her back. But the baby whimpered again, and with shaking hands she reached out. She touched the food as if it were a treasure from another world. Her tears fell silently as she lifted the tiny piece to her child's lips. The baby's mouth opened, chewing weakly. And then, for the first time in days, a faint smile formed. The sound of his soft laughter filled the broken night, fragile yet powerful. The soldier's chest ached as he watched. The child's laugh was a spark against the darkness, a reminder of why he once fought. Not for flags, not for power, but for life itself. He closed his eyes for a second, letting the sound heal something deep inside him. When he opened them, again he saw the mother staring at him differently. Her fear had not vanished, but now her eyes carried a question, a small light of hope. He pointed to himself, tapping his chest. "Human," he said slowly. She did not understand the word, but she repeated her own name softly, a word filled with gentle sounds. He nodded, repeating it as best he could, the alien syllables awkward. On his tongue, her lips curved just slightly as if surprised he tried. The baby cooed as if approving of the strange exchange. They could not share language, but they shared something older, something beyond words. Hunger, exhaustion, fear, and the desperate will to protect the innocent. The soldier reached out, not touching her but leaving his hand open in the air. She looked at it for a long moment, torn between trust and instinct. Then, slowly, she placed her hand above his, not fully touching, but close enough that warmth passed between them. In that fragile gesture, a bond began, but the ruins around them did not sleep far away. A faint mechanical hum rolled through the streets. The soldier's head snapped up, his ears sharp. He knew that sound. Enemy patrols, machines sweeping the rubble for survivors. His hand tightened, his heart pounding again. The mother sensed, it too clutching her baby close as her eyes widened. The soldier picked up his rifle quickly, the moment of peace broken. He held a finger to his lips, signaling her to be silent. Then he pointed toward a dark corner behind the collapsed wall, urging her to hide. She hesitated, fear burning in her chest, but the look in his eyes was not command. It was protection. She obeyed, moving quietly into the shadows, holding her, baby tight. The soldier stood between her and the sound, rifle raised again, his body tense. The hum grew louder. The glow of searchlights began to sweep across the broken streets. He knew they would not hesitate to kill anything alive, human or alien. It did not matter anymore. He glanced back once at the mother, saw her eyes watching him with a mixture of fear and something else. Trust. For the first time in this endless war, he was not fighting for orders, not fighting for survival alone. He was fighting for them. And as the enemy patrol drew closer, the night grew heavy with silence. The soldier's finger tightened on his weapon. The alien mother prayed. The soldier pressed his back against the broken wall, his rifle steady, his breath slow. The night was filled with the hum of machines, the sharp whine of scanners sweeping across the ruins. He stayed perfectly still, his eyes focused on the movement of light beams passing through the shattered streets. Behind him in the darkness, the alien mother held her child close, her body trembling but her spirit unbroken. She trusted the soldier now, not completely, but enough to place her life and her baby's life in the fragile thread of his protection. The patrol passed slowly, mechanical claws scraping the ground, voices of soldiers speaking in a harsh tongue. The soldier waited, every muscle in his body ready to fire, ready to sacrifice. But the lights drifted away, fading into the far distance, and the hum of engines grew weaker. Only then did he allow himself to breathe, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. He lowered his rifle and looked back, his eyes meeting hers in the shadows. The mother's eyes were wide, filled with relief and fear. The baby whimpered softly, reaching his tiny hand toward the soldier again. The soldier gave a small nod, lowering himself to one knee, as if telling them it was safe now. The alien woman stepped forward, her movements slow, cautious, but no longer desperate to run. Something had shifted, something invisible but powerful. She sat across from him, the baby resting against her shoulder. The soldier pulled out the remaining half of his food ration. This time, instead of pushing it across the ground, he broke it into smaller pieces and offered them directly. She hesitated, then took the food, breaking it gently and giving it to her child. The baby ate with small sounds of satisfaction, and a weak smile spread across the mother's lips. The soldier watched quietly, his own stomach growling with hunger, but he did not take a bite. His gaze softened as he studied the child's small face, the way the baby clung to life despite everything. For a moment, the ruins around them disappeared, and he saw only the bond between mother and child. It reminded him of home, of his sister, of the small nephew he had not seen since the war began. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, he found her watching him closely. Though they had no words in common, they began to communicate in gestures. He touched his chest again, repeating human, slowly and firmly. She pointed to herself, repeating her name, the alien syllables soft but clear. He struggled to repeat it, his tongue stumbling, but he managed to echo the sound. She laughed quietly, a fragile laugh. Surprised by his effort, the baby looked between them, eyes wide, as if sensing the strange connection forming. The soldier reached into his pack and pulled out a small metal charm, a coin from his home, scratched and worn. He held it out in his palm, letting her see it. She tilted her head, then touched it carefully, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. He pointed to the coin, then to his chest, trying to show it was a memory of his world. Her eyes softened, and she reached down to pick up a small piece of cloth tied around her wrist. She showed it to him, a faded ribbon, clearly precious, maybe the last thing from her home before the war. The two exchanged these silent symbols, not giving them away but showing them as proof. Proof that both had things worth protecting. Both had things worth remembering. Their eyes spoke more than words, carrying trust, sorrow, and an unspoken promise. It was in this silence that the bond began to grow stronger. The soldier shifted closer, careful not to frighten her. He pointed at the baby, and then at the food, gesturing again that she should eat as well. She shook her head at first, but his firm expression left her no choice. She took a small bite, her body shaking as the taste filled her starving mouth. Tears fell as she chewed slowly, and she whispered words of thanks he could not understand. But he nodded, understanding her gratitude without needing translation. Outside, the ruins remained dangerous, but inside this broken shelter, a fragile peace bloomed. The baby fell asleep at last, tiny breaths, steady and soft. The mother laid the child carefully in her lap, covering him with the ribbon from her wrist. The soldier leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his body, but he forced himself to stay awake, guarding them. The fire in his heart was stronger now. He was no longer wandering without purpose. He had something to protect. The night stretched long, filled with distant echoes of war. Neither of them spoke, but sometimes their eyes met. And in those quiet moments, trust grew brick by brick. The soldier thought of how strange fate was, how an enemy could become family in the span of hours. The alien mother thought the same, wondering if the universe had answered her prayer in the form of this tired human. They both wondered if this fragile bond could survive the storm still waiting outside. As dawn began to creep over the ruins, painting the sky with gray light, the soldier finally allowed himself to close his eyes. The mother watched him, her baby safe in her arms, and for the first time in many days, she felt something that seemed impossible. Hope. The first light of dawn touched the ruins, its pale glow stretching over broken towers and shattered walls. The soldier woke with a start, his instincts sharp even in exhaustion. He reached for his rifle, scanning the empty streets with cautious eyes. The alien mother stirred as well, her baby still asleep in her arms, the child's soft breaths the only gentle sound in a world of silence. For a moment, there was peace, fragile but real. But the soldier knew peace never lasted long in war. His ears caught it first, a faint metallic hum in the distance. It was the sound of machines, the steady march of patrol units moving closer. The hairs on his neck rose as he recognized the rhythm of armored boots. The enemy was returning, and this time they were searching more carefully. He motioned to the mother with sharp gestures, pointing toward the shadows behind the collapsed stone. She understood at once, clutching her baby tightly and moving into the dark corner. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she obeyed without question. The soldier crouched low, gripping his rifle, his heart pounding as the sound grew louder. Every step of the approaching patrol echoed like a drumbeat of death. Soon, voices carried through the air, hard, commanding, cruel. The soldier's jaw tightened, memories of his own battles flashing before him. He had fought these patrols before, had seen what they did to survivors. No one was spared. Not human, not alien, not even children. If they found the mother and child, their fates would be sealed. The searchlights cut across the ruins, beams of white light sweeping over rubble and stone. The soldier pressed himself against the wall, his breath steady, his finger near the trigger. The mother rocked her child gently, whispering soft words to keep him quiet. Her heart raced, praying the baby would not cry, praying the machines would pass. But fate was never that kind. The sound of heavy boots came closer, the searchlight drawing nearer. One of the patrol soldiers shouted, pointing toward the very wall they hid behind. The soldier cursed under his breath, realizing they had been spotted. He turned his head toward the mother, his eyes locking with hers. She understood instantly. He was ready to fight for them, even if it meant his death. He rose from his crouch in one swift motion, rifle raised. The patrol turned their lights fully on him. Weapons lifting, metallic claws clicking as scanners activated. "Human soldier!" one of the voices barked, filled with hatred. The soldier didn't wait. He fired first, the rifle cracking loudly through the morning air. The shot struck true. Dropping one enemy before the others could react, chaos exploded. The mother gasped, holding her baby tightly as the soldier yelled for her to stay down. Bullets and plasma fire tore through the ruins, shattering stone and filling the air with sparks. The soldier moved fast, rolling behind cover, firing again and again. Every shot was meant not just to survive, but to shield the fragile life hidden behind him. The patrol advanced, their weapons spitting fire. The soldier felt pain rip across his arm as a shot grazed him, but he pushed forward. His vision blurred with sweat and blood, but his determination sharpened. The mother cried out softly, watching him fight, her body trembling with fear but also awe. This man, this stranger, was risking everything for them. He threw a grenade from his pack, the explosion shaking the ruins. Dust filled the air, choking the battlefield in smoke. Through the chaos, he caught sight of more enemies pushing forward, relentless and cold. He clenched his teeth, realizing he could not hold them off forever. But he would not stop, not until she and her child were safe. The baby began to cry, the small voice cutting through the smoke and fire. The mother covered the child's mouth gently, rocking him even as her tears fell. Her heart begged the soldier to survive, begged the universe to spare him, but all she could do was watch as he stood like a wall between them and the storm. Her silent plea carried into the chaos, a prayer for a man she should have called enemy. The soldier's rifle clicked, empty. He tossed it aside, pulling a knife from his belt. The enemies moved closer, surrounding him. One swung with a metal blade, and he blocked, striking back with fury. His body screamed with pain, but his spirit burned hotter than ever. Then he heard it. The faint sound of engines in the distance. Different from the patrol, reinforcements, maybe allies, maybe more enemies. He could not tell. But he had no time to think, only time to fight. He slashed, struck, pushed forward, keeping the path between the mother and death closed. Blood marked his arm, his chest, his face, but still he did not fall. At last, silence fell. The surviving patrol fled into the smoke, retreating after heavy losses. The soldier collapsed to one knee, blood dripping from his wounds. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps, exhaustion pulling him down. But he turned his head, searching the shadows. The mother was there, her baby pressed close, her eyes wide with relief and fear. She crawled forward, kneeling beside him, tears streaming down her face. He had saved them again, and she knew in her heart that this bond was no longer fragile. This was survival shared, pain shared, hope shared. The war outside was still raging, but in that broken ruin a new trust had been born, and the danger, though it had passed for now, promised to return again. The ruins shook with the echo of battle, smoke and dust swirling through the shattered streets. The soldier staggered to his feet, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm and side. His rifle was gone, his knife stained, and his strength nearly spent. But his eyes burned with fire, the kind of fire that only comes when there is something worth protecting. Behind him, the alien mother clutched her baby tighter, her body shaking but her spirit refusing to break. The patrol had retreated, but not far. Their voices carried through the smoke, commanding each other, regrouping, preparing to strike again. The soldier knew this fight was not finished, not yet. He wiped blood from his brow, his hands trembling. But he raised his stance once more. He would not let them pass, not while the mother and child still breathed. The baby whimpered, sensing the danger in the air. The mother rocked him, whispering words from her own tongue, promises that everything would be all right. But her eyes betrayed her fear, glancing again and again at the human soldier. He was wounded, broken, yet standing, and in her heart she prayed he would not fall. If he fell, their hope would fall with him. The enemy moved closer, shadows shifting through the smoke, metal claws scraped against the broken ground, weapons humming with deadly power. The soldier picked up a shattered piece of rubble, gripping it like a weapon. He clenched his jaw, every muscle screaming in protest. He was not fighting for victory anymore, he was fighting for survival, for them. The first enemy lunged through the haze, its armored frame glowing under the morning light. The soldier ducked low, swinging the stone with brutal force. The impact cracked against metal, sparks flying, and the machine stumbled back. Another soldier charged, blade raised, but the human caught the strike with his bare arm, pain tearing through him. With a roar, he drove, his knife into the enemy's chest, pushing until the light inside flickered out. The mother gasped, tears burning her eyes. She could not understand why this man fought for her, why he risked his life for her child. But in that moment she did not see an enemy. She saw a shield, a guardian. The baby cried louder, the sound breaking through the chaos like a desperate plea. The soldier turned his head just once, his eyes locking with hers, and in that look he gave his vow. I will not let them take you. More enemies pressed forward, surrounding him, their voices sharp, their movements merciless. The soldier swung, stabbed, blocked, each motion driven not by strength but by will. His body faltered, but his spirit held. He fought like a cornered wolf, fierce, relentless, refusing to surrender. The ruins became a storm of sparks, blood, and fire, but even wolves cannot fight forever. A heavy strike slammed against his chest, sending him crashing into the rubble. His knife flew from his hand, spinning across the ground. Pain surged through him, white-hot and blinding. For a moment, darkness pressed at the edge of his vision, whispering to let go. The mother cried out, clutching her child and rushing forward. She fell to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she tried to shield him. The enemy soldiers advanced, their weapons aimed, ready to finish them all. The soldier forced his eyes open, pushing against the weight of despair. He reached out, gripping her arm weakly as if to say, "Stay behind me," summoning the last of his strength. He pushed himself back to his knees. He spotted his knife lying just beyond reach. With a desperate cry, he lunged forward, seizing it. The enemy struck again, but this time he was ready. He drove the blade upward, striking true, and the enemy fell with a metallic crash. The battlefield grew silent once more, smoke drifting like ghosts through the ruins. The surviving patrol fled, their numbers broken, their morale shattered. The soldier collapsed again, his body bleeding, his chest heaving, his strength nearly gone. But he had won, at least for now. The mother knelt beside him, tears falling freely, whispering words he could not understand, but he felt their meaning. She placed the baby gently in his arms, her own hands trembling. The soldier stared at the small face, the innocent eyes, the fragile life. The child reached out with tiny fingers, touching his cheek. The soldier felt warmth, a spark of hope in the middle of despair. This was why he fought, why he refused to fall. The mother looked at him with eyes that no longer carried fear. They carried trust, gratitude, and something deeper, an unspoken bond. The soldier, though broken, gave her a small nod. It was not just a promise. It was a declaration. He would fight until his last breath to protect them. In the ruins of war, a bond stronger than blood had been forged, but the danger was not gone, only delayed. The soldier knew more patrols would come, more battles would rage. The war was far from over, and survival would demand even greater strength. Yet as he looked at the mother and her baby, he realized something new. He was no longer fighting alone. Together they had survived the storm, and together they would face whatever darkness waited ahead. The ruins lay quiet again, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. The soldier sat against the wall, his rifle gone, his body trembling, blood soaking his torn uniform. Every breath felt like fire in his chest. Every movement dragged him closer to collapse. Yet he kept his eyes open, forcing himself to stay awake, forcing himself to keep watch. For behind him, the alien mother and her baby were still alive, and that was enough reason not to let go. The mother crawled to his side, her baby pressed tightly against her chest. She looked at the wounds across his arms and chest, her face filled with shock and sorrow. Her hands trembled as she tried to stop the bleeding with strips of her torn clothing. She whispered words he could not understand, but the tone was clear. It was desperate, pleading, begging him not to die. Her tears fell onto his wounds, mixing with the dust and blood. The soldier closed his eyes for a moment, his strength fading like smoke in the wind. When he opened them again, he saw her watching him, her eyes red with fear. She shook her head, as if refusing the truth, as if refusing to believe that the man who saved her could fall here. The baby whimpered, small hands reaching toward the soldier, as if sensing his pain. The sound cut into the soldier's heart deeper than any blade could. He wanted to speak, but his words came out broken. Still, he tried, forcing out one sentence, one vow: I will not let him die. The mother stared, not understanding the words but feeling the promise in his voice. Her lips trembled, and then, in an act of raw desperation, she placed the baby gently into his arms. Her hands lingered, pressing the small child against his chest, her eyes begging him to understand. The soldier froze, holding the tiny life close. The baby's warmth against his skin felt like the last flame of the universe, fragile, yet endless. He looked at the mother, confused. But then realization struck him. She was pleading not for her own life, but for her child's. If she could not survive, she wanted him to take the baby, to carry him to safety. The soldier shook his head, his chest heaving with emotion. "No," he whispered, even though she could not understand the word. But her tears told him everything. Her eyes told him everything. She was willing to give her last breath if it meant her child would live. She pressed her hands against his, forcing the baby into his care, as if transferring her soul into his arms. The soldier's vision blurred, not from blood but from tears. He had fought through fire and death, but nothing broke him like this moment. This was not war, this was not strategy. This was love, pure and desperate. He held the baby tighter, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest, and he made his vow silently with all the strength left in him. "I will protect you, even if it costs me everything." The mother collapsed beside him, her body weak from hunger and exhaustion. Her head rested against the cold stone, her eyes half closed. She looked at her baby one last time, her lips forming words he could not hear. Perhaps it was a name, perhaps it was a prayer, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. The soldier touched her shoulder gently, his eyes fierce with determination. He pointed toward the horizon, toward the faint smoke of distant camps. He tapped his chest, then the baby, then the path ahead. His meaning was clear, even without words. "I will take him. I will carry him to safety." The mother's tears turned to a trembling smile, weak but filled with gratitude. She touched his hand one last time, her fingers brushing against his skin, a silent thank you. The soldier lifted the baby carefully, his arms trembling but steady. The child stirred, then nestled against him, small and trusting. He winced as pain shot through his body. But he forced himself to rise. His legs shook, his wounds screamed. But he stood tall, for the child, for the mother, for the promise he had made. The mother watched with fading strength, her eyes locked on him. She saw not an enemy, not a soldie. The soldier walked through the ruins with the baby pressed tightly against his chest. Every step was a battle, every breath a struggle, his wounds burning like fire. But he refused to fall, not while the fragile life in his arms depended on him. The city around him lay silent, broken towers leaning against the gray sky, streets littered with rubble and ash. It looked like the graveyard of a forgotten world, but inside his arms was proof that life still fought to survive. He glanced back once more at the place they had left, where the alien mother had taken her last breath. Her face still lived in his memory, her desperate plea etched into his heart. She had trusted him with everything, and he would not betray that trust. The baby stirred, letting out a weak cry, and the soldier hushed him softly, rocking him as if the sound of war itself could be soothed away. The weight of the child was light, but the responsibility felt heavier than the sky. The path forward was dangerous. The soldier knew it. Enemy patrols still roamed the ruins, and supplies were almost gone. His rifle was lost, his knife dull and bloodied, his body broken. But his spirit had never been stronger. He was no longer a lone fighter in a meaningless war. He was carrying hope, carrying the future. As the sun rose higher, the ruins came alive with new threats. In the distance, the metallic hum of machines grew louder again. The soldier's jaw tightened, his arms holding the baby closer. He searched for cover, finding a collapsed building with enough shadow to hide them. Inside, he crouched low, his ears sharp, his breath steady. The patrol passed, their scanners sweeping the ground, voices harsh. The soldier pressed his back to the wall, shielding the baby with his body. The child whimpered softly, but the soldier whispered gently. Calming him with steady words, he closed his eyes. willing the machines to pass. And at last the sound faded, the danger moving on, relief washed over him. But only for a moment. He knew this was only the beginning. The road out of the city was long, and the enemies were many. Yet he forced himself onward, one step at a time. Every step whispered the same vow. I will not stop. I will not fail. Hours passed, the day turning into a pale afternoon. The soldier's legs shook, his wounds reopened, blood dripping into the dust. But when his strength faltered, he looked at the baby, the small eyes blinking up at him with innocent trust. And each time his spirit rose again, pulling him forward. At last, as night began to fall again, he reached the edge of the ruins. There in the distance faint lights flickered, a human outpost. It was guarded, dangerous, but it was also the only chance for survival. He hesitated, wondering if they would accept the child, wondering if they would see the baby as an enemy. But he shook the doubt away because he had no choice. He moved closer, keeping to the shadows, his body growing weaker with each step. At the gates, he stumbled, collapsing to his knees. Guards rushed forward, shouting, weapons raised. The soldier raised his free hand, his voice broken but fierce. Help, the child, he begged, forcing the words through cracked lips. The baby let out a cry, small but powerful. The guards froze, their eyes wide as they saw the alien infant cradled in the soldier's arms. One guard whispered, "What is this?" But another stepped forward, his gaze softening. He reached down, gently lifting the child. The soldier sagged with relief, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. As his vision blurred, he looked at the baby one last time. He saw not an alien, not a stranger, but a child of innocence, a child of hope. He remembered the mother's eyes, her final smile, her plea. And he knew, even if he did not live to see it, that the child would survive, that humanity had risen, not through weapons but through compassion. The soldier collapsed fully, his breath shallow, his body broken. But his heart was calm because he had kept his vow. The guards lifted him as well, carrying both soldier and child into safety. The war outside still raged. The galaxy still burned, but something had changed. Because one human soldier and one alien mother had proven that mercy could shine even in the darkest ruins. And from that mercy, a new future would be born. Not just for one species, but for all. A future carried in the arms of a broken soldier and the cry of a child. A future that whispered the truth of humanity. That real strength was not in power, but in the will to protect life, no matter where it came from.